Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes Podcast. We're here with Jared Oates, who is the co-founder and COO of Niche Academy. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get a little bit niche-y.
All right. It's
There you
niche,
go,
by the way.
Niche.
I'm just kidding.
There you go, all the listeners. Tell us a little bit about the founding story of Niche Academy. I've looked at the website briefly. I think it's really cool, but let's start with like the founding story and the genesis of it all.
Sure. So the founder, Jeremy Wilson, grew up going to library conferences with his dad. His dad was one of the founders of Circe Dynex. It was Dynex at the time. And Jeremy went to work with Dynex, and actually I worked for them as well. That's where we met. And he noticed, and I noticed a problem while we were there, that libraries have a lot of electronic resources that just don't get used very much. And they spend a lot of money with ebooks and audiobooks and language learning tools. And it's frustrating that, libraries have this offer and they've tried all kinds of things to change that, social media marketing and signage in the library. And it didn't make a difference. And so as we studied the problem, we realized that there were a couple of core problems. There were some technical hurdles that people just were intimidated by. The people that can benefit from those things the most had trouble getting them to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so we realized that we could build some tutorials that would help libraries solve that problem. And we could embed them in their website. So, someone's just kind of browsing through and they see, what's the ebook offer here like? And a short introduction followed by just enough instructions to have a satisfying first experience really makes a big difference. And it's interesting, we focused on training the patrons, the users of the library first, and then we realized that if you're going to make a really big difference, you need to have the staff comfortable with them as well. Because in most libraries, there's like a handful of people that know about the electronic stuff. And if we could train all of the front-facing staff so that they were confident with it and they could introduce people to it and, have a tutorial they could reference that was kept up to date, because these things evolve a lot. We found that combination, training the staff and training the patrons and kind of making that available at the point of need, made a huge difference. Like we saw libraries that had struggled with single-digit percentage point increases in their usage, suddenly getting 70%, 80% increase in usage. And we realized that that's kind of a pattern that's generalizable. If you can tap what you could call the people power, help the people that you serve learn how to do things in a different way, and put that training at the point of need. So like make it really easy to find, make it really easy to get to when they're interested in it, then you can change all kinds of things about an organization. So we started with public libraries, and then we realized that there were similar kinds of things that we could do for academic libraries. And I had a friend that worked with an organization that served individuals with developmental disabilities, and that there are very similar needs. They had a lot of regulation, a lot of training that they needed to provide, and it was hard to do it all in person. And so we were able to create some training that they could deliver at the point of need. And then, kind of as a segue from working with public libraries, we realized that parks and recreation organizations and municipalities generally had similar kinds of needs to train the public, to train their staff. And so we started building out a library of tutorials and a platform to deliver those tutorials, to deliver that content at the point of need. And that's kind of what, 7 years later, we got about 1,300, almost 1,400 paying customers. And they range from, very small organizations, little libraries in rural communities, to state libraries, to consortia. We have one national customer, well, two actually, I guess. We've got Qatar and New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
And so it's grown, and it's been kind of a steady, slow growth process over the last 7-8 years.
Very cool. So the point of need, as you've mentioned, and then a little bit of train the trainer,
Mm-hmm.
which is important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most people that have been to the library in the last 10 or 15 years know there's more than just books, right?
You'd be surprised. But yeah, hopefully
um,
most do now.
and I'm just thinking of my local library in Holiday. I have found that when I'm there, it's like young kids and then older
Mhm.
people, right? Not a lot of people in their 18 to 34 range. We can say that. And then there have been questions where, like, hey, can you tell me about this? Asking for like my kids, and it's like, well, and they'll, their gears will grind, or they either can
Let
or
me find
can't.
the person that
Yeah.
knows about that.
And then it's like, okay, never mind. You feel
Yeah.
bad, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay. And so that's kind of one of the things you're solving for is
Yeah.
what's the point of all of that if you
Yeah.
can't utilize it?
If you can up the game of every person in your frontline staff, then it changes the whole dynamic of your organization.
Yeah. Because a lot of libraries, they have really cool stuff and
They
they're
do.
imaginative and they push the needle.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think that, but once you go in there, like a really well run one that's got really attentive staff, it's fun. It's way better than the internet.
Yeah,
Um, and it opens up a whole new world,
it
at
does.
least in
Yeah.
my opinion.
And they build bridges for people that, there is still a digital divide. There are people that don't have access, and libraries help help bridge that.
Yeah,
They serve an important function in that way.
absolutely. So, off the top of your head, what's an example for like Parks and Rec? That
Yeah. So Parks and Recreation, they have sports programs, and when you spin up a sports program like a soccer league or a summer baseball program, or you're starting a pickleball league. Pickleball is kind of the craze, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot of training that you can provide, just kind of teaching people the basics of the sport. One of the things that you have to have if you're going to run a city league is volunteers, and it's usually parents to be the coaches. And a lot of people want their kids to participate, but they don't want to be the coach because they don't know how to coach a team. They don't know how to work with kids. They don't know that much about the sport. I mean, I've been there myself. I've watched soccer for a long time, but I had no idea how to get 12 8-year-olds to
play.
to act like a team, right?
Yeah,
And so if you can provide some training, helping them learn how to work with kids, how do you set up rules? How do you run drills? Then you can provide some support that increases the confidence of those parents, and it expands the pool of people that are available for volunteers. So, the problem that it solves for those rec coordinators is that they don't have to spend as much time on the phone begging or
Yeah.
coercing.
yeah.
So,
So it could be, hey, do you want to volunteer, be a soccer coach? I'd love to. I've got all the time in the world, but I don't know anything about soccer.
yeah.
Okay,
So we
I got
got
that
we got some
covered.
training here. This will help you get comfortable. No worries, we got your back.
Yeah. Does that go like all the way into like officiating and
Mhm.
being a ref?
Yeah. So we create training for refs and training for officiators, and we make it so that it's trackable and always available. So asynchronous. And that makes it much easier for those administrators to deliver that training. If it doesn't all have to be in person and you can actually make sure they've gone through it before they come in for the in-person, then that in-person time can be a lot more productive.
Yeah. And the officiating's probably better.
Yeah.
Less arguments.
Yeah, you'd hope. Sportsmanship, though, is another thing that we provide training on. You got to set some expectations.
Yeah. Very cool. And then on your website, you've got old way versus new way.
Hmm.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So if you kind of think broadly about how organizations run, a lot of the training that happens is still kind of one-on-one. It's labor intensive, and it's not that repeatable. And so the old way is that most of the training is just someone who knows sharing their knowledge with one or a few other people that don't know. And if you can capture that knowledge and make it repeatable and have a chance to kind of refine it, and then provide a way for people to go through that instruction without requiring the immediate time of someone who is a trainer, then you change the dynamic for organizations, and you become you become an organization that can really cultivate your people in a new way. So the old way is training is in person, it's live, and or it's even if it's online, it's usually live, and it's kind of uh, you pay for the time every time.
Yeah.
But if you can capture that training and make it asynchronous, and make it easy for people to get to and easy for them to use, then you've changed something important. And also, if you can make it really easy to create that training, so a lot of the learning management systems that are available have a learning curve, and so we've really made an effort to lower that learning curve. So if you look at the editing mode of Niche Academy versus the learner mode, they're almost identical. The only difference is that you have a few little editing controls, and that helps people feel confident. So we have children's librarians that are not all that tech savvy, but they can put a story time online because they can prop their phone in front of them and do their story time like they do it, and then you just upload that to Niche Academy and you're done. We kind of solve all of that that hosting and that training overhead.
Very cool. And so is that kind of like white labeled for?
It is.
Okay. So you could be in a rural library in Kansas
Mm-hmm.
and be one in Texas, and same result as long as they're customers of Niche Academy.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And, you guys are obviously niche, and that's where you're focused.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that you might want to be less niche? I'm thinking firefighters or CPR, things that there's been training. I've gone to trainings, right? Whether
Mm-hmm.
it's Boy Scout, it's here's the best way to do CPR.
Yeah.
Seems like it changes a lot. But here's the basics of fire safety,
Yeah.
right? Do you ever have the tendency to want to go upstream?
We do. We've found, kind of learning from hard experience, that to go after a new market, you have to have a core set of training that's kind of ready to use,
Mm-hmm.
and you really have to listen to that market to the point that you understand where their biggest pain points are, and you can speak to those pain points directly. And so we feel like the general idea of providing ready-to-use training and making it really easy for people to create their own training and delivering it in a white-labeled way, embedded in just about any environment you can imagine, is a really generalizable thing. And we hope at some point in the next 10 years to be the most widely used learning system anywhere. But the way we get there is with a lot of very specific individual markets, and it's kind of an organic process
Mm-hmm.
to find your way into those niches,
Yeah.
So with Parks and Recreation, we're solving a very specific set of problems, and it's really kind of low in the food chain for municipalities. The recreation managers are 3 or 4 steps removed from the people that have the purse strings.
Yeah.
But if you can solve their problem and make it really easy, then you can kind of move upstream and solve bigger problems, and that's where we see ourselves going.
Very cool. I see a lot of applications in rural
Yeah.
America where it's come learn how to ref.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 45-minute drive, let alone the time there, 45-minute drive back.
Yeah.
Do you guys find that that's true, that you have a lot of adoption in rural America?
Yeah. Our early customers with IDD have been smaller towns. And, partly that's a function of the bureaucracies that, you have to get through the gatekeepers to make your pitch. And but partly it is just that there's a need there, that you've got rec managers that are trying to run a program, and they really don't have a lot of time, and they really don't have a lot of resources. And if you can build something that makes their life easier, then there's a broad need for that.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys have kind of zeroed in on some niches that you saw from your time at your previous employer.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously worked. Your thesis was correct. How do you guys go about developing the products for these specific industries and users? the customer feedback first? Do you build it and then put it out there? How do you guys go about it?
Yeah. Well, again, this is one of the things we've learned by doing it wrong and then figuring out a better way. We found that we need to sell it before we build it. I mean, the only way you know if you have a product someone wants to buy is if they buy it. And it sounds a little backwards to get someone to buy it before you've built it. But I think you can do that and still keep your soul and your honesty.
Yeah.
By being transparent. And when we're confident that we can build something and we can show, this is what our training looks like, and this is the need that we see in your space. When we get someone to commit to buy it, then we go ahead and start to build it. So we had with Parks and Recreation, we started out with really just kind of some some tutorials that were samples that we would just kind of show people as a proof of concept that one of our sales guys had put together. And once we'd sold a dozen of those, then we said, okay, this is legit. We can do this. And you still have to go through that process of running the numbers on the cost of acquiring a customer and kind of metering your investment in a new industry versus serving one that you're already in. And we're trying to figure that out. Honestly, we're still in the belly of that beast.
Yeah. And you guys are selling to a notoriously slow
It is. It's
group.
it's a decision-making process that is usually by a committee, and you have to get lots of different people to buy in, and budget cycles are a year in advance. So, yeah, it's been a patient process. But once you're in, I mean, we have a 95% renewal rate, and so it's we've been able to grow from profits as we've gone along.
Very cool. And do you find that once you're in a town or an ecosystem, that a neighboring town or they're at a convention, like, man, my life sucks. Well, mine doesn't as much anymore because of this. Is that a good sales channel?
It is very much. So I mean, if you look at, we have a map of our customers, and you'll notice there are concentrations, like around Chicago. There are a group of libraries that they talk to each other, and one will say, "What's that little widget on your website? Well, that's really cool." And that word of mouth has been a really important door opener for us.
Yeah. And how do you guys go about, like, outside of Chicago, like if you wanted to get another footprint somewhere, is it like boots on the ground? Is it email? How do you get the meetings?
Yeah. So, well, with libraries, we've been lucky in that a lot of the contact information is publicly available. So we have a system that we've worked out with researchers who identify the contacts that we think are the best ones at each of these libraries. And we hire setters that just get on the phone and make our pitch.
Yeah.
And try and set up appointments. And so those setters set up appointments for our salespeople, and the salespeople do the calls. And that's kind of the bread and butter. The other thing, though, that's been really successful for us is webinars. So what we're offering is training. And if we can build a brand as an organization that has expertise and really useful knowledge to share, then, I mean, it's an easy segue to say, actually, we build a lot of this stuff, and it's a really reasonable subscription to have access to all of this stuff.
Yeah. And so they would get like the entire library if they wanted, or they could do a la carte.
We actually keep the subscription really simple. It makes more sense for budgets. And another thing that we've been able to do so far, and I don't, inflation being what it is now, I'm not sure we'll be able to sustain it, but we don't raise prices on existing customers. We raise prices fairly regularly for new customers, but we grandfather in our existing customers, and that creates a real loyalty.
Yeah, I would imagine. Especially in that market, right? Like, they don't like surprises, I don't think. What are some of the products that you were kind of surprised at how well they were adopted and used?
Social media tutorials. So libraries spend a lot of time introducing people, like older people that haven't been exposed to Facebook or to Twitter, and they want to know what it is. And so they go to the library and they say, how do you use Pinterest? My granddaughter wants me to be on Instagram, and I don't know. And so we have tutorials on how to use these social media platforms. I would never have predicted that that would be interesting, but they're dynamite.
Yeah. Yeah. Those ones are probably pretty fun and easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. And so the library is happy that they're having interactions with patrons.
Mm-hmm.
The patrons are happy that they learned something.
Yeah.
Their library provided value, and they don't mind, being a supporter of the library, I would imagine.
Yeah. And so it is a virtuous cycle. So we listen attentively to what people request. We have a queue of tutorials that we're building based on the requests, and things go up and down in priority based on how many requests we get. But it is sometimes surprising what they ask for, and as long as it's something that's generalizable and not just for one individual unique situation, we'll build it.
Yeah. Are there any reverse question that you thought would be good and people just didn't find it useful?
So one of the things we built early on was a social media management tool, kind of like Hootsuite or something like that. But it was a very simplified tool built for libraries, and the idea was that we would be able to share graphics and things and make it easy for people to post about common things. We thought that was just going to be dynamite. And, the initial response when we would show that at trade shows was, wow, that's really cool. And nobody used it.
Nobody used it.
It was just one of those things that, man, that seemed like a good idea at the time. But
yeah.
So, we pulled it, actually. We pulled that out of the product.
Okay. All right. And you guys are a team of 30, 40 people, right?
Yeah.
As you guys wind through, you said you're in the belly of that cycle there. From a strategic point of view, how do you guys decide as a team? What are the interactions like on next strategic moves?
We have a really good executive team, and what we are trying to do right now is for me and for Jeremy to take ourselves out of being in the business. At the moment, I do the website, and I write the copy, and I manage the social media, and it really detracts from our ability to step back and say, what are the most important things that we should be working on? But to be able to step out of the business, you really have to have the right people on the bus. And so we've made good progress with that. We're not quite there yet. There's some key positions that we haven't filled yet. And so our hope is that if we can fill those last few positions and keep the dynamic that we have, which is, one of our values is that we're teachable, and we value having space for people to be wrong, to screw up and be able to say, yeah, I screwed up, and that's okay. That's how we roll. That's how we learn.
Yeah.
And we have that dynamic with the key people that we have right now, and that's how we make strategic decisions going forward. We get together and we decide what our best bet is, what the evidence we have shows would be our best next bet, and we try it. We try and do it in a cost-effective way, bullets instead of cannons.
Yeah.
And if it works, great. If it doesn't, then we figure out why and either refine it or cut bait and move on to something else. And we've tried, we tried moving into serving police, or not police, actually we did police also, but fire departments. We made a concerted effort. We thought there was some real opportunity there. And as we went into that market, it really just didn't work out. And so we said, all right, that's not our next space.
Yeah. But you mentioned earlier Qatar and New Zealand. So are there certain countries with the way they've kind of formed their infrastructure and around your services that are better than others?
Well, yeah. New Zealand was a great example. They had some key people that were just really kind of visionary, that understood what problems we solved, and they said, listen, you've been selling to lots of little libraries in New Zealand. Let's do this for the whole country. And there was a good national library infrastructure and good communication from the local branches to the National Library, and it was a great experience. And I don't know if they're going to be able to keep that funding at the national level, but we have relationships now with all those libraries, and I'm confident that even if the national funding doesn't continue, those individual libraries are getting enough value that they'll want to subscribe individually. The UK, I thought, would be a really strong market because of the way they do funding for social services. It's been more challenging than I thought, actually, and so I don't know if you want me to. I probably isn't very interesting to go into all the reasons why not, but
Yeah,
it was a surprise to me.
Yeah.
That the UK market was as difficult as it's been.
Yeah. Because like I'd imagine before you go into another country, you kind of do an analysis on how they structure everything, right?
Yeah.
No, there's probably better fits than others.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, at least, you've got an excuse to go to New Zealand.
Right?
Which is very good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, so.
Yeah. I've never been. I've been close, but I'd have like the world's worst client if it meant I got to go.
Yeah.
Have
it's not an overnight, though, unfortunately.
It is not. Yeah. Very cool. Let's talk about like you in the meat and potatoes section of the day. Busy, scaling, growing a company, lots of pokers in the fire. How do you manage your day? What tools do you use?
Well, so I have a consistent schedule for exercise and like music and things that enrich life and family, and so those have some kind of dedicated spaces. The day starts at 5, and I'm a little eccentric that way, I guess, but it gives me space before pressures start to set in.
Yeah.
So there's dedicated time there, and then at the beginning of the week, I have at 8:00 every Monday morning, I have what I call Monday Hour 1, and I look through the week and I look through my task list and I say, what are the key things that have to happen before this week is over, and then I put those in as kind of the big rocks in the jar, and I make sure that those are a commitment, that whatever else kind of chaos comes in, I've got space for the big things, and I leave myself lots of open space for the chaos that that always comes, but that's my method.
Yeah, I like it. The Monday Hour 1.
Yeah,
very cool. Yeah, you can actually glean a lot of direction just from like looking at the calendar, and then to your point, what are the bigger rocks on the to-do list? It makes it digestible.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like, all right.
And then when you come to the end of the week and you haven't moved anywhere near as far on your task list as you wanted to, you can say, all right, but I committed to these things, and they were the most important, so I can sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. And then last question here. What are you guys focused on over the next 2 to 3 years that's got you the most excited?
It really is, for me and for Jeremy, a matter of pulling ourselves out of the business and creating a system that develops our people. I mean, we preach this idea that all the organizations we work with are going to be stronger and better as they up the capacity of their people. And we need to get to the point that we have a system for developing people internally. It's a messy business. I mean, you have people come with all of their baggage and their personalities, and once we've made a commitment to someone, we feel like that's more important than even our profits. And we have, I should guess mention this just in the context of, I think, most of the listeners here, we have kind of a unique funding situation. We do have an angel funder who was more interested in developing entrepreneurs than in making a mint. And it's given us the space to grow at our own pace and to grow from profits. He's given us the freedom to make decisions, and we're not under the gun for specific revenue targets or a certain level of growth. We can build the company in a way that's sustainable, in a way that really develops solid relationships and helps us to build something that's going to last, not just something that's going to get sold.
Yeah. Very cool. I like it. And it's insightful, and I think it's fun when entrepreneurs find a niche.
Yeah.
And you guys are obviously in that niche. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Jared. Appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Garrett.